How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Wednesday. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Yehud in South Carolina, who's going to be away for a few weeks. Nisia Tova, may you have good, safe, productive travels. Sharon in New Jersey, Guy in Ohio, Bella in Florida, Melissa in Great Neck, Ryan in Jacksonville, Shandora in the Bronx, Lucy in Minnesota, Elvis in New York, Joseph in Nevada. You are a few pages ahead. Tonight we're getting to the story of Yonasan ben Uzziel. Marjorie in Georgia, Chaim in Florida, Lanit in Silver Springs, Spencer in Connecticut, Alan in New York City. Welcome, everybody. Tonight's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by our very own Lisa Gilman. So sweet. In honor of Sal and Nina Litvak. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for donating during our annual campaign, enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. May you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. We say amen. And if anybody else would like to donate now during our annual campaign, donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. Who's excited for some counter-programming? Let's learn some beautiful, beautiful Torah. Tonight's page is excellent. Really some very colorful incidents. 133a is where we are, continuing our journey through chapter 8 of Tractate Bava Basra, 23rd volume of the Talmud. Continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 6, which we're going to complete, God willing, tonight. Rav Huna says, with regard to a person on his deathbed who wrote a document granting all his property to another, so the court investigates the legal status of the recipient. If he is fit to inherit from him, meaning if that person is one of his sons, so he takes the property as an inheritance, right? On the deathbed, he says, give all my property to so-and-so, and if he has multiple sons, well, this would be, normally you would say distribute the property evenly among all the sons, with the oldest son, the firstborn, getting a double portion. But this guy on his deathbed says, no, give it all to one of them. Do we listen to him? Yeah, that's what we've been talking about. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yonasan ben Baroka. Yochanan ben Baroka, right? Is it Yonatan ben Baroka? Now I'm spacing, having said it so many times. Isn't memory awful like that? Yochanan ben Baroka, of course. So that's what Yochanan ben Baroka said, that if a father wants to give it all to one son, he can. So why would it be any different on the deathbed? That's what we're hearing on the deathbed. But listen to the rest of this. If he gives it all to one of them who is fit to inherit him, like, for example, one of his sons, then he takes the property, that one gets all the property, and he takes it as an inheritance. And if not, he takes it as a gift. So in other words, on his deathbed, this guy can decide to give all his property to whoever he wants. If he gives it to one of his sons, it's characterized as an inheritance. If he gives it to somebody who is not one of his heirs, then it's characterized as a gift. So this person that the guy on his deathbed selects to receive all his property gets it in any case. The question is it going to be characterized as an inheritance or a gift? Now, before we talked about, well, if it's gift versus inheritance, that can have implications with respect to sustaining a wife, giving up her right to a ketubah because she's received all the property. But it was more like, how much is the person going to get? So here, the person gets all the property either way. So then the question becomes, what difference does it make if it's characterized as an inheritance or a gift? Rav Nachman said to him, why should you steal this halacha, this law, and not attribute it to its source? If you hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, say explicitly that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, which it is, as your halachic statement follows the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka that a person can bequeath the property to any of his heirs, changing the disposition of the inheritance among his heirs however he wants. Perhaps this is what you meant to say. There was a certain childless person, right, who had no heirs, who was dying, or no children who are heirs. You can have heirs in the sense that if you predecease, God forbid, your father, then he inherits from you, or if you have brothers, they inherit from you, but not your but he has no children. So there was a certain childless person who was dying, and those around him said to him, "To whom should his," meaning your, "property be given? Perhaps it should be given to so-and-so." And he said to them, "Well, rather to whom if not him?" And you, Rav Huna, meant to say to us, what is the legal ruling for a situation like this? That if that person is fit to inherit from him, he takes it as an inheritance. And if not, he takes it as a gift. And Rav Huna said to him, yes, that is what I was saying. Okay, so we're still back with the same question. The deathbed disposition of assets to some person, if that person is an heir, he gets all the property characterized as an inheritance. If he's not one of the person's heirs, he gets all the property anyway, but it's characterized as a gift. So what difference does it make how it's characterized? The Gemara asks, with regard to what halacha, is there a difference whether he receives it as an inheritance or as a gift? Rav Ada bar Ahava, who was in the presence of Rava, thought it would be correct to say, if he is fit to inherit from him, right, if this person who's going to get all the property is one of his heirs, so then the giver's widow is sustained from his property, as she has the right to be sustained from the inheritance. And if not, and the property was given as a gift, then the widow is not sustained from his property. Perhaps that's the difference between inheritance and gift. Rava said to him, can the widow's right be diminished by the gift? Now that you say with regard to inheritance, which is granted by Torah law, that his widow is sustained from his property, with regard to the gift of a person on his deathbed, which is effective without any formal act of acquisition, so that we can honor this gift that's made on the deathbed. And this law is by rabbinic law, right? It was a rabbinic enactment that somebody could just dispose of all his assets on his deathbed, even without the recipient making a formal act of acquisition. We honor it because he's on his deathbed, but that device, that law exists by rabbinic decree, not because it's explicitly mentioned in the Torah. So Rav is saying to him, well, if by Torah law somebody receives an inheritance, right, which is a stronger device for granting that property to that person, nonetheless the widow is sustained from the estate, all the more so, right, kal v'chomer, in a case where the person receives the gift through the legal device of a rabbinic enactment. Is it not clear that the widow has sustenance rights? So that's not the difference between gift and inheritance. She's still going to be sustained, whether it's a gift or an inheritance. Rather, Rava said that the difference, whether it is characterized as an inheritance or as a gift, is in accordance with the ruling that Rav Acha bar Rav Avia said, according to the statement of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. In the case of one who said, my property is given to you, and after you to so-and-so, right? I'm giving you my property for your lifetime. And after you die, it goes to someone else, right? My property is given to you, and after you to so-and-so. And the first recipient was fit to inherit from him. The second gets nothing in place of the first, i.e., he does not receive the property after the first one dies. As this formulation employed by the owner was not one of a gift. Rather, it was a formulation of inheritance, and inheritance has no end, i.e., it cannot be stopped. Therefore, since the first recipient acquired it as an inheritance, the heirs inherit from him, his heirs inherit from him, and it cannot be taken by the second. In other words, if I'm disposing of my assets, and I wish I had $1 million to give to you. Okay, so let's say I have $1 million. That's an old Steve Martin joke. How to have $1 million and not pay taxes. First, get $1 million. Second, when the tax man comes around and says, where's the taxes that you didn't pay? You say, I forgot. Steve Martin did it better than me. Okay, so the point is, if I had $1 million and I was going to give it to you, and I could say, I'm giving it to you for your lifetime. So whatever's left of that $1 million after you die, it goes to Johnny, your neighbor who lives next door to you. Okay, so I'm making a lifetime gift of this property. This would be especially so if it was real property, if it was a field. I'm giving you this field to use for your lifetime, and after you, it goes to Johnny, our neighbor. So I can do that. That's called a lifetime gift. So you are only the owner of it during your lifetime. You can, take all the produce, etc. But when you die, it goes to him. I can do that with a gift. But if I bequeath to you a field, right, which could happen because you're an heir of mine. So if you are one of my heirs, and so you are fit to inherit from me, and I bequeath the field to you, and I say, and after you to Johnny. Johnny's not going to get it because you received it as an inheritance, and therefore when you die, it goes to your heirs, right? So there's lifetime gift, there's no lifetime inheritance. Inheritance has no end. So if you inherit from me as one of my heirs, then even though I cut out other heirs because, for whatever reason, now you inherit from me, it's yours, it's fully yours, and who's it going to go to next after you die, God forbid? Your heirs. So that's the difference between gift and heir, or gift and inheritance, with respect to this disposition of assets made on a person's deathbed. I think I just read that, right? Has no end. So Rava said to Rav Nachman, but he ended it. The one who bequeathed to him, right? So I ended by saying inheritance has no end. Rava said to Rav Nachman, but he ended it. The one who bequeathed it to him ended his inheritance in advance by stating that after the first one dies, the property will be given to the second. And the Gemara answers, well, he thought that inheritance has an end, but the merciful one states that it has no end. He thought he could do that. It's an inheritance to you for your lifetime, and then it goes to someone else, but you can't. So the one who gave using that language, in terms of that it would then go to someone else, said nothing. In terms of giving it to the first one as an inheritance, that guy got it. Now we're on page 133b. There was a certain person who said to another, my property is given to you, language of gift, is given to you and after you to so-and-so, and the first one was fit to inherit from him. After the first died, the second came and claimed the property. So interesting. I used the language of gift, but I gave it to somebody who is fit to inherit from me, right, to one of my sons. So then, have I created a lifetime gift, which is the language that I used, or have I actually created an inheritance because the identity of the person that I gave to is one of my heirs? Rav Ilish, who was in the presence of Rava, thought to say that the second also takes a share of the property. He divides it with the heirs of the first. Rava said to him, judges of compromise, who as a matter of course divide disputed property between the parties, meaning judges who don't really know the law very well, but they want to make everyone happy. So when there's a case before the court, they just end up dividing the assets among the people who came. That's called a judge of compromise. This is a label that Rava is ascribing with, in a critical manner, negatively. Right? Rava said to him, judges of compromise, who as a matter of course divide disputed property between the parties, rule in this manner. But isn't this identical to the case concerning which Rav Acha bar Rav Avia sent a ruling that the second receives nothing? He might have used the language of gift, but he gave it to one of his heirs. So an heir got it, it becomes an inheritance, it stays with that one. The second one in line for a lifetime gift ends up with nothing. Rav Ilish was embarrassed by his mistake, and to comfort him, Rav read the following verse about him. I, the Lord, will hasten it in its time. Isaiah 60, verse 22. And this was as if to say, it was due to divine providence that I was here to correct you before your mistaken ruling was implemented. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 6 here in chapter 8. Mishnah 7. With regard to one who wrote a document granting his property to others as a gift and left his sons with nothing, what he did is done, i.e. it takes effect. But the sages are displeased with him. It works, it's legal, but the sages are displeased with him. This is not a proper way to behave, even though halakhically it's legal. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says if he did so because his sons were not acting properly, well, then he is remembered positively, right? So father should not cut his sons out of his will unless his sons were behaving in some way that merits being cut out of the will. That's Mishnah 7. Gemara. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Do the rabbis disagree with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, maintaining that depriving one's children of their inheritance is inappropriate in any event, or not? So the Gemara suggests, come in here, as Yosef ben Yoezer had a son who was not acting properly. Yosef ben Yoezer had a vessel known as an iliata, full of dinars, right? So think a briefcase full of money. And he arose and consecrated it to the temple treasury, thereby depriving his son of his inheritance. His son went and married the daughter of King Yanai's crown weaver. After the son's wife gave birth, he bought her a fish known as a binita. And he tore its stomach open, or he gutted the fish in order to prepare it for dinner. And he found a pearl in the fish, a big pearl. He decided to sell it. His wife said to him, do not bring it to the treasury of the king to sell it, as they will take it from you for an insignificant sum of money. Rather, go bring it to the temple treasurers, and do not appraise it yourself, as any declaration to the Most High is equivalent to transfer to an ordinary person. And if you offer to sell it for an amount less than it is actually worth, you will not be able to change your mind. Rather, let the treasurers of the temple treasury appraise the pearl. They'll tell you what it's worth. They're honest. They'll tell you what it's worth, and then you'll get a proper payment for it. So he brought it to the temple treasury, and they appraised it as having the value of 13 vessels full of dinars. 13 briefcases full of money, like the briefcase that his father denied him as his inheritance because this guy was behaving badly. Makes you wonder, was he really behaving badly, or did the father misunderstand him in some way? Because it seems like, it's such an unlikely thing to find a pearl like that in the fish you bring home for dinner, that it must be like heaven was smiling on him. Now, maybe his father misunderstood him, or maybe the fact that his father disinherited him prompted him to wake up, examine his ways, make a teshuvah, right, an atonement, turned his life around. And then, God said to him, you've done a beautiful job turning your life around, and here's, a reward. So maybe that's what happened. We don't have those details. But at any rate, his father disinherited him, and at some time later, he finds a fortune in the belly of a fish, right? So what happens? He brought it to the temple treasury. They appraised it as having the value of 13 vessels full of dinars. And the treasurers said to him, there are 7 iliata of dinars at our disposal to pay you for the pearl, but there are not an additional 6, right? It's worth 13 vessels of dinars. We could give you 7. That's what we have here. He said to the treasurers, give me the 7 in exchange for the pearl, and as for the additional 6 that you owe me, they are hereby consecrated to heaven. So he could have got a much bigger fortune, almost twice as big, but he decides to give that half of the fortune as a donation, a free will donation to the treasury. Sounds like, however badly he was behaving when his father disinherited him, maybe he really did turn it around because he seems to be behaving great, right? When he got a fortune, he made sure to give not just 10% of it as a tithe, he gave nearly half of it as a gift to the temple, meaning as a gift to God, as a way of saying thank you. The treasurers arose and wrote, Yosef ben Yoezer bestowed 1 Iliata to the temple treasury. Right? When his father disinherited him, he gave that treasure to the treasury, to the temple treasury. So Yosef ben Yoezer bestowed 1 Iliata, 1 vessel of dinars to the temple treasury, and his son bestowed 6. Sounds like they're giving him a big honor, right? His father gave 1 vessel of dinars to the temple treasury. He gave 6. And there are those who say that they wrote, in this logbook of the treasury of the Holy Temple, this is when the temple was standing, Yosef ben Yoezer bestowed 1 Iliata to the temple treasury, and his son removed 7, which he received for the pearl. It's not like he stole them. He removed 7, but obviously that was in exchange for a pearl that was worth 13. So if they're characterizing it that his father gave 1 Iliata to the temple and his son removed 7, it would seem like they're making a negative description of the son. But that's according to one version of the story. The other version of the story, very positive description of the son. The father gave 1 Iliata, the son gave 7. Or gave 6, rather. Okay. So the Gemara infers from the fact that they said approvingly that Yosef ben Yoezer's son bestowed 6. So by inference, he acted well. The father acted well when he left his son out of the inheritance. And the Gemara responds, on the contrary, from the fact that according to the second account, they said disparagingly that the son removed 7. So by inference, Yosef ben Yoezer did not act well when he left him out of his inheritance, as he caused money to be removed from the temple treasury. So rather, no inference can be learned from this story with regard to the dilemma as to whether the rabbis agree with the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, as the two accounts contradict each other on this matter. In other words, is a father justified in disinheriting his son if his son is behaving inappropriately? One view says yes, the other view says no. So we're not sure yet. The Gemara asks, what halakhic conclusion was reached about this matter? Come in here. As Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, Shinana, and we've seen this before, that Shmuel says to Rav Yehuda, sharp one, right? He's complimenting Rav Yehuda, calling him Shinana, you're very sharp, but learn something even though you're so sharp. Shinana, do not be in a house where inheritance is transferred away from its rightful heir, even if it is transferred from a wicked son to a good son, and all the more so if it is transferred from a son to a daughter. Evidently, the rabbis hold that inheritance should not be transferred in any case. So interesting. The father certainly can do it. He can transfer all or part of an inheritance from one son to another, from one son even to a daughter. But the sages say to each other, don't act as a witness on a document that accomplishes that. So therefore, it would seem like, you're changing what God had arranged, and maybe you shouldn't do it. At least according to what Shmuel is saying to Rav Yehuda. New subject. The sages taught there was an incident involving one man whose children did not act properly, and he arose and wrote a document transferring all his property to Yonasan ben Uzziel. This is the example that Yosef brought up the other day, which apparently was also detailed in the Yerushalmi, but here it is in the Bavli. He arose and wrote a document transferring all his property to Yonasan ben Uzziel, in other words, one of the sages, as a gift. What did Yonasan ben Uzziel do? He sold a third of the property for his own needs. He consecrated a third of the property, giving it as a gift to the Holy Temple, right? A way of saying thank you to God. And he returned the remaining third to that man's children, the one who had disinherited his sons. Shammai, right, the great sage Shammai, came to Yonasan ben Uzziel with his staff and traveling bag to protest his giving part of the property to the man's children against the deceased's wishes. Why the detail, the staff and traveling bag? Meaning that Shammai, right, who's a major sage, the gadol of that generation, usually when he wants to talk to somebody, he sends for them to come to him. So he went to another town, where Yonasan ben Uzziel was, probably because he was studying under Hillel. And he didn't set up shop in an inn somewhere and then summon the guy, to his inn. Rather, Shammai marched right up to this guy's house because he had something important to say. And what did he do? Why did Shammai go to see him with his staff and traveling bag in hand? To protest Yonasan ben Uzziel's giving part of the property back to the man's children against the wishes of the deceased. Right? So here it would seem that we have support for you can redistribute your assets however you want. And, no less a luminary than Shammai will say, and since that's what the man desired before he died, and particularly because he disinherited the sons because of their behavior, you should not now restore some of those assets, that fortune, to those kids against the wishes of the man who died. So Yonasan ben Uzziel said to him, Shammai, if you can repossess the property that I sold from its purchasers and the property that I consecrated from the temple treasury, then you can repossess what I returned to the man's children as well. But if not, if you don't have any legal device for repossessing what I sold and for repossessing what I consecrated, well, then you will not repossess what I gave to the man's children. Shammai then said, Ben Uzziel reprimanded me. Ben Uzziel reprimanded me, and I have no response. In other words, you're right. It was your property, and you can do with it whatever you want. Doesn't matter that it contradicts the father's wishes. And the Gemara asks, what did Shammai hold initially, causing him to protest Yonasan ben Uzziel's behavior? And the Gemara answers, well, he protested due to the incident that happened in the city of Beis Choron. As we learned in a Mishna, and we are on page 134a, and I'm very close to done for today, so if you've got questions or comments, please get them in now. As we learned in a Mishna, tractate Nedarim 48a, an incident occurred involving someone in the city of Beis Choron whose father had vowed not to derive benefit from him. And the son was marrying off his own son. And he wanted his father to be able to participate in the wedding meal. Right? So you got it, 3 generations. The father disapproves of the son so much that he takes a vow that he will not benefit from anything that the son has. Maybe, I don't know what the situation was, but it's, as a hypothetical, maybe the father wanted the son, to be a Torah scholar, and instead the son became a businessman and, forsook all his Torah studies, and the father was mad, and he said, well, all your wealth, he took a vow not to benefit from any of it. But now the problem is that, his son, who maybe made a lot of money, is now marrying off his own son, meaning the guy who took a vow, his grandson is getting married. And grandpa wants to go to his grandson's wedding. And his son, who loves his dad and wished he wasn't, that his father wasn't so angry at him that he took a vow never to benefit from anything that he owns, is trying to find a way so that grandpa can come to the grandson's wedding. And so, right, so there's grandpa, dad, and junior. So just for shorthand. And so dad said to another, the courtyard where the wedding will take place and the wedding meal are hereby given to you as a gift, but they are given to you only so that my father, meaning grandpa, will come and eat with us at the meal. Right? So dad wanted to circumvent the prohibition imposed by grandpa's vow and enable grandpa to participate in the meal. So he transferred ownership to someone else for that purpose, so that since he'd received it as a gift, now it's all owned by somebody else, and grandpa can come and not violate his vow of never taking benefit from anything of dad's property. So the recipient, right, when dad said, here, take all everything that's involved in this wedding, I give it as a gift to you so that my father can come to it. The recipient said to the dad, if everything that you've just given me is mine, well, then they are all hereby consecrated to heaven, i.e. to the temple, and are forbidden to everyone. If what you gave me is mine, it's all given to the temple, and all these supplies and the home and the silks and the food and whatever that was going to be used for the wedding, nobody can benefit from it. It's all going to the temple treasury. So dad said to him in anger, I did not give you my property so that you should consecrate it to heaven. And the recipient said to him, you gave me your property only so that you and your father would eat and drink together and thereby appease each other. And the sin of transgressing your father's vow would be hung on my head because I enabled this transgression. Yeah, this looks like a busybody because I'm not so sure that he'd be doing anything wrong by doing that. And he probably should have consulted his own rabbi before totally messing up what the father was trying to do and making it possible for grandpa to come to his grandson's wedding. However, did this all take effect? Maybe not, probably not, because when dad said, I'm giving you this as a gift so that my father can come and be with his grandson, that sounds like a condition. Since there was a condition on the gift, sounds like the guy did not have the right to consecrate it because it wasn't his to consecrate. Therefore, it wasn't really his. And if it wasn't really his, then maybe the guy had a point because it would be a violation of the vow. The Mishnah continues, in reference to this incident, the sages said, any gift that is not so absolute that if the recipient were to consecrate it, the gift would be consecrated, is not a gift. In other words, in order for it to be a gift, the recipient must have the ability to consecrate it. If he doesn't have the right to consecrate it, it's not really a gift. It's some kind of a loan. Similarly, Shammai had initially reasoned that the gift to Yonasan ben Uzziel was not a valid gift, as its sole purpose was so that the property should not fall into the possession of the man's children. But once he discovered that Yonasan ben Uzziel consecrated part of the gift, he realized that it was, in fact, a valid gift with which the recipient could do whatever he pleased, including give some of it back to the children of the deceased. That's what I've got for us today. I'm not seeing any questions yet. But my New York friends, I hope to see you on November 18th, Monday, November 18th, at the New York City premiere of Guns N' Moses. It's a Monday night, beautiful charity benefit for an organization called Join Israel, which benefits at-risk youth, families, and seniors in need in Israel. And that's always a great cause, and how much more so since October 7th. So it's going to be a great night at the Angelica Film Center in Soho. Nina will put the link to buy tickets in the comments. You can also go to gunsandmosesmovie.com. And there's a link there for the New York City premiere on November 18th. But I know there's a bunch of us in the New York area, so I really hope to see you there at that November 18th premiere of our movie. You know, Nina and I wrote it. I directed Guns and Moses. Well, here's a question or a comment from Elvis. To me, these inheritance discussions once again balance what you can do against what you should do. Exactly, especially when we're talking about something you can do, but the sages would be displeased. It encourages forbearance on the part of the grantor of inheritance, even when the heir is not behaving properly, and it encourages the grantor to think in the long term of the family's best interest rather than the short run of parental disapproval. And when you talk about parental disapproval, parents always think they know what's best for their kids, and I think often they do. Often they do. But we should all be humble enough to realize that, you know, maybe our kids have pretty good judgment. Maybe we're wrong in what they're doing and what we think they should be doing. So thinking about the long-term best interest of the family, that's a wonderful value to point out, Elvis. So yeah, very good point. That's what I've got for us today with God's help. See you again tomorrow, Thursday, at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a great night.